thank you, Clint Rickett. Thank you so much for coming, for joining. We've actually, so when I first in February was thinking about doing this podcast, I kind of guinea pigged you at church talking about for I think like 45 minutes about what we're going to talk about today, just to see if I could get someone talking for something.
Long, right?
And it ended up going really, really well. And so I've been excited since then to actually get you in. But yeah, thanks for coming in and taking out.
Glad to come.
I think one thing people watching the video will notice is we're in a different place. You're our first guest in the new setup at my house, with all of my figurines and whatnot. So yeah, we're recording this. The audio should be much better than the last time. My mic was terrible quality. Devin was like, dude, that sounds bad. And I was like, I know, there's nothing we can do. But I think too, for anybody listening, we're on Spotify, we're on Google Play, we're on iTunes now. That's exciting. That is sweet. And so y'all check out Men of Faith podcast there. But enough with all that. Let's actually dig in. Do you want to like introduce yourself a little bit, kind of like career, what you do, and then we can go into like other questions?
Clint and Rickett, my wife is Crystal, and we've been married. December we'll have been married. Have been married. Let's see how to add it up, but it's 19 years. 19 years in December.
What day?
December the 16th.
Oh, we're the 18th.
Are you really?
Yeah, we'll be 9 years this year. So we're 10 years behind you.
That's right. Got a son, Ryan. He will be he'll be 11, October the 25th. Yep. And we're branching off this year, starting with this homeschool journey thing. Yeah. Crystal was stroking out about that. She said, no, I'm a dietitian. I'm not a teacher, but all the homeschool curriculum came in, and so it's in boxes there in the den. And Crystal's like, okay, we'll start that next week. So that's taking some liberty there. Start that next week. But yeah, I'm the director of therapy at First Step, which is it's a day program for developmentally delayed clients, preschooler, even up through the adult population. Most of our therapies, it focuses on just the preschoolers. We have a little bit of adult therapies that we deal with, but mostly preschoolers, birth to 5. And I've been a speech therapist I've been with First Step for 17 years. So, nice. Yeah, started out in Glenwood, just as a speech therapist there, and then the last 5.5, 6 years I've been in an admin role in Hot Springs, kind of serving as director there. But been fortunate, man. I've got have an awesome staff. 30 fluctuates 30 to 40 therapists across 6 different counties in Arkansas.
So I mean, like you've really become successful in a career. Kind of like the business of what you do.
I mean, as far as the therapy world goes, that I'm kind of at the top of where I would, where I would want to be. Then I can't say that I necessarily saw myself being in an admin role when I started. I always figured I would be working with kids and families, but just kind of the way it worked out, and I've enjoyed it. And I've enjoyed the admin, having the management side of things.
Yeah. Do you miss kind of working with the kids ever?
There are days that I do, but then I can be in my office and hear somebody peeling the paint off the walls and think, okay, I'm good here at the desk, Yeah. No, but I do miss some of the families early on I got really connected to. It's cool to see them. We had some visit at Crossgate the other day, and I was on praise team, and this lady came up to the front of the stage after we were done. Hey, Clint, how are you? And I said, hey, I'm good. I could not remember who you are. And anyway, finally put it together. And her daughter was one of my first clients, and she was sitting out there, and I would have never picked her out. She's crazy. Let's see, she's a senior in high school this year, so it's pretty wild. So it was cool. It's cool to make those connections, and I do miss that side of it. So and some of the challenges of some of the more severely involved kids, I do miss. Kind of made me think,
that's where Courtney is kind of in her career as well. I mean, like she's physical therapy, and she is loving working with children, and she is thinking about doing some training, working with kids with autism, special training towards that. And whenever she's moved to a different place, like when we moved from Benton to Hot Springs, she started working with Insight. And she was like missing her family, though. Like you just create a deep connection there. It's a very personal, like in my role in the type of business I do, and I'm dealing with profits and loss, or I'm dealing with like making decisions about a product and a project, there's not like an emotional connection there. But, and she's like, I can't imagine doing what you do. It would stress me out. And she was like, explained it to me. It's like, it's so much different than that type of work.
It's quite a difference between just the service provider role and the manager role. I do miss some of the simplicity of the service provider and that emotional connection. You get connected to those, you get connected to the families. And it's pretty cool to build those bridges. You don't always have that in the management role. I guess you do, but you're building it with, with your staff to some extent. Definitely. So you are about to make a really big move. I talked last episode about my focus and passion in ministry and in life kind of shifting. Yours is a monumental shift. It's quite a difference.
And so you are moving to Vanuatu, and one question, I think the very important question, do they have Mountain Dew in Vanuatu?
They do not have Mountain Dew.
They do not. Okay.
I call it the nectar of the angels. I'm going to have to find something else to enjoy.
I've been drinking, which they may not ship to Vanuatu, but it's called G Fuel. And it's got like, it doesn't have that bite though. You know what I mean?
They do have Dr. Pepper. I noticed you drink a lot of Dr. Pepper. So I can get a Dr. Pepper.
Oh, well, you'll be fine.
That's my second choice.
You'll be fine.
I'll survive.
Yeah. If you've got Dr. Pepper, there's no. No, so tell me a little bit about where that is, and then I've got some more questions just about the start of that journey as well.
So Vanuatu is a little chain of islands, a fairly long chain of islands between, kind of position between Fiji and Australia, out in the South Pacific. We GPSed it one time when I first started going. We used the sat phones and all that. And it's just over 6,000 miles from Little Rock, Arkansas.
Nice.
So it's a pretty good haul out there in the middle of nowhere.
It's a little ways.
Pretty good ways out there. Tropical, it's in the southern hemisphere, so it stays.
You'll be upside down now.
We'll be on the underside of the earth. That's what I say. Going to the other side of the earth this week. It's just it's a really cool place, and it's very simple way of life. There's still some pretty strong ties to tribal and tribal customs, traditional customs, and some of it very primitive. There has been a little bit of move towards more westernized. Tourism has really picked up on the island that we're going to be on is Tana Island, which is it's part of the country of Vanuatu, but the island Tana is it is 9 miles across and about 12 to 15 miles long from north tip to south tip.
So to put that into perspective a bit, I mean, that's not very big.
No, it's just a little bit bigger than Hot Springs. I mean, like Hot Springs, Garland County, kind of
Arkansas, kind of like So is it like? I guess the county would be more relative to that, or would it just be Hot Springs?
It'd be, I mean, it'd stretch out a little bit beyond like Hot Springs proper borders, but not too far.
Then is that where you're going to be like staying mostly? Like, is everything there, or do you have to actually go back and forth to the main island?
The bulk of the work will be there on Tana Island, and then the capital island is a Fate Island, and it's westernized. I mean, it's got your Ramada hotels. I mean, all your tourists, La Meridians, all those the Southern Hemisphere resort type things. Of course, it's ocean, clear water. Comparable to Fiji, as far as everybody kind of automatically thinks, is it like Fiji? Well, it's comparable. The water's as clean, and I mean, it's as far as being westernized there in Port Vila.
So you, this story that we're about to talk about ends with you and your entire family here in the next couple of months moving to the island and staying there. There's no timeline of coming back. Like, y'all are going into live.
Several people have asked, like, so how long are you going to stay? And so really, God hasn't given us a timeline. So we're going because we're supposed to go, and just going to stay until God gives us release. And when He releases us from what we have to do there, then we'll see what's next. You know?
Yeah. So I think I want to. That's what really intrigues me, is how someone that is so successful in their business and in their career goes from what's that process and thought process like to go from that to I'm moving my entire family and going here. And I also want to start at the beginning of, I think you were saying earlier, this was somewhat of like a 10-year journey.
Yeah, it's or 12. I mean, my first trip was in 2005. It was part of a medical trip from the church that we were at previously before God moved us to Crossgate. And I went as part of that medical team thinking, okay, I work near the head, neck, mouth, things like that.
Yeah.
There was a couple dentists going. I thought, sweet, I'll pair up with the dentist.
Yeah.
I'll pull teeth. I'd heard stories about pulling just gobs of teeth, you know. And I thought, that's cool. I can identify teeth, and I know, you know, which ones you need, which ones you can do without. And so I thought, that's sweet. I'll pair up with this dentist, and got over there, and I ended up pulling a few teeth, but real quickly, got me paired up with a family practice doctor from North Arkansas, and we started working a lot further south. I ended up doing like 6 circumcisions with this dude.
Whoa.
So I was like, well, that's not teeth, but if that's
had you ever done circumcisions before? That was a new
not
one?
then, not since either. So thank God, I don't want part of that. But
I can't imagine that's. I would have a hard time getting used to doing that type of work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The doctor asked me, said, so do you want to do one? I'm like, dude, no, I don't know. If he said, no, it's easy. I'll walk you through it. And I said, well, okay, whatever. So anyway, gave it a go. But yeah, it was part of a medical team. And I think I was a little more enamored then with the idea of just going somewhere foreign. You know, I had been a part of, as growing up in a youth group at Sharon in Benton, where I grew up. I'd been part of, you know, singing mission trips, you know, while we took all these choir tours every summer. And we went to Canada and several states, you know, here in the US. We kind of did a summer singing tour kind of a thing. Yeah. But after we moved back to Hot Springs and we're plugged in at our church there on the west side of town here, it wasn't too long. There was a team went in 2004, and I thought that'd be kind of cool. I didn't go, but then 2005 came up and had the opportunity to go. And I think, like I said, I was more enamored with the idea of going somewhere far off, you know.
Yeah, so that was your first experience. That was my
first, international, right?
Yeah,
first international trip, you know. And this is crazy enough that my first time to actually even see the ocean, you know, really being from Arkansas, you know, we went to the mountains and the rivers and the lakes, and I didn't see the sins and driving off. But so the first time I'd ever really spent time in the ocean or around the ocean was in Port Vila.
Did you have much of a culture shock when you got there? Because it sounds like the mission trips beforehand were really around the States.
Yeah.
My experience with foreign mission was in youth. We went to Mexico for the first time, and they talked to us about culture shock and how to be self-aware about that. And I distinctly remember one of the things that they said was that you'll ask questions like, well, why don't they just fix that? And I heard myself say it, and as I was saying it, I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. I started becoming aware of, I guess, what people would call my own privilege in a lot of ways, and the things I take for granted, which I'm thankful for having that experience early on. Yeah. But I remember my youth director's husband, he was like, well, they may not have the means. And it was like a business too. It was actually like a water park, and the gate was broken. I was like, why don't they just fix that? Magic Springs fixes that kind of crap all the time. Right. And so, did you kind of experience something like that in your first trip?
I did. I guess the thing that jumps out at me the most, and it didn't really hit me until I got back. I got over there, and it was an 18-day trip. So we were all in, and there were 30 of us on the team, and it was busy. And they find out that westernized medicine is coming, and it's just like a flood to the village where you're going to be. And so we had nationals from the surrounding villages coming, and they stayed all week just so that at some point during the week they could be seen by this Western doctor, and which kind of plays into some of their animism and their belief that that we've got it all figured out, and that God's blessing them because they have the opportunity to be near westernized medicine. It just kind of plays into some of their belief. But I do remember thinking, like, the missionary that was on the field at the time, he had a toilet up in this building that had been built, but you flushed it with 5-gallon buckets. Well, the plumbing was there. There was one of the Insta-Hot water tanks that somebody had put in for him, years prior, but like the toilet wouldn't flush. You had to bring buckets of water in. And I remember thinking, why don't we run the water up here? Kind of a similar idea. I mean, you have the availability to fix that. Why don't we just run the water up here? And then you can flush the toilet, whenever you want. And we had built a plumbing septic type system, so you didn't have to go out in the bush and use the bush toilet, But I don't know that it really was a kick to the gut until I got home.
Really?
And when I got home, I was like, man, these jokers, these people came and waited all week, slept under the trees all week long, just to get a steroid shot in the knee, or just to get a bottle of ibuprofen because they don't know it. They've got arthritis, or, they've got things wrong with their joints and stuff that we can walk down to the corner store and get a pack of Advil, I mean, it's just so for me, it really hit me when we got back home, and you really take notice of how accessible a bottle of Mountain Dew is. Right. I mean, if I want it, I just go get it, and don't give it a second thought. But for them, it's, do I spend the money on eggs, or do I spend the money on rice? Which one's going to last longer for my family? Which one's going to be the most benefit to the village?
Right.
They really have that community.
So it's more of like a community type.
Yeah. I mean, there's nobody in the village that's going to do without. If I have something and you need something in the village, you're not going to have to do without it because I've got it.
Really?
And then somewhere down the road, you're going to reciprocate that, Yeah. And that's just kind of the way. That's just their cultural thing. Just the things they do, Cool.
I'm checking to make sure we're good because we're in a new setup, so anything could go wrong at any moment. So I just want to make sure we don't need to adjust the camera.
Devin over there, yeah.
So it sounds like it's more of like there's a whole political thing around this word, and I don't mean that. I don't want to like put that into play here. But it sounds like a socialist type.
I mean, it does kind of have that. Yeah, it does kind of have that feel. But really, it may, at least in the villages where we are, and I mean, it is even in some of where we're going to be, even in some of the outlying villages. I mean, they really take care of one another. It's a close knit. It's more of a family feel. They're going to take care of one another. Yeah, it's not someone.
Well, and it's like, I guess I'm curious what they do if someone doesn't, quote unquote, pull their weight. Have you ever, like, in your time there, seen anything like that?
No, I really haven't. I mean, if you've got a need, there's typically somebody there that can meet that need.
Everybody's doing their part.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It's totally different than here. I mean, and then I'm even guilty of it. Like, well, I'm doing my part. That joker should go get a job, kind of thing. I've been working. We have that mentality, or I do. From time to time. But, but over there, it's maybe it's because of the lack of availability of jobs and ways to really make money. They really look at one another like family, and they take care of one another. So in that sense, it's kind of encouraging. To see that.
Right.
But they just don't have the,
I think that plays well into the gospel too.
Yeah.
I think like it's not a far stretch when they hear of the Acts church and how they behaved. Right. I don't think that's going to be a far stretch to what they're currently doing.
No, I don't think so.
Like it is here, right? Like here, it honestly is a far stretch. And like community groups, we get these like community groups and small groups from church around us, and like it's amazing. But I think that like we don't even share life as much as the Acts church did in those small groups and in those community groups. It's very rare.
Right.
And I wonder sometimes about, is that right? Is it like,
oh no, I think that's another thing that I came away with. Probably didn't recognize it early on, like as early on as 2005, but I went back in 2007 as part of a Bible school trip, and it was another one of those deals where God was just kind of he really began then. That's when Crystal got to go for the first time. And we both came back, and I think we didn't talk about it, but we had a sense that God was kind of stirring something in.
Well, that's actually one of my, I wanted to ask about. So you came back from the first trip. Did you have a idea, or did you come back and like 3 months later go, I got to get back? I know like eventually I'm going to get there.
I knew when I got back in 2005, God had connected me to this little kid named, it makes it difficult just because of the deep emotional connection, but connected me to this kid who was about 9 years old, and his name was Pierre. And his mom was a pretty strong person in the village. His dad was they're both still living. They're still pretty connected to the village where we're going to be. But all I could think was, how is Pierre going to understand the gospel? How's he going to understand the gospel? How's he going to? And the missionary was there he was doing the pioneer work. I mean, he was making the connections with the villages that had never heard the gospel.
Right.
But I just got a sense that there was something, like I was worried. I was just worried that Pierre he wasn't going to understand. He spoke French. Everybody else in the village spoke Bislama. Even his mom and dad spoke Bislama.
Oh, really?
He had gone through. He had been there's two types of schools. You got the French speaking schools, or three, I guess: French, English, and Bislama schools over there. And the parents send their kids to whichever one they can afford, and they have to pay for even from kindergarten. So Pierre had ended up in the French school system and had learned French. I spoke a little Bislama, enough to communicate with his mom and dad, but but everybody else in the village was predominantly Bislama, or this White Sands language, which is like the heart language of that village. And I remember coming home thinking, Pierre, he doesn't understand anything that David, the missionary that was there.
There's no one there to
and his
him.
Parents just had limited ability to translate, I guess, that information to him. So God kind of knit our hearts together, and he was so shy, and I finally, by the end of that 18-day trip, I finally got him convinced to come out and play ball, playing catch and kicking the ball, whatever. So anyway, when we got back, I shared that with Crystal, and I knew that God had allowed me to make that connection with him, but it wasn't that obvious, so obvious then. What God was about to do, but I did tell Crystal immediately. I was like, the next trip that we go, you've got to go, you've got to go, you've got to go. And so,
did Crystal have a hard time? Like when I've had this experience with like people in my life. I'm not saying necessarily Courtney, but like my parents and friends. You come back from an experience like that, and you're in a different place,
totally
mentally. And they're not, because they're living life here while you've gone to do that. Did Crystal kind of have a hard time understanding that, or kind of like, I was like, oh yeah, maybe like,
I think she was more like, oh yeah, that's cool. I would like to go. But the thing about Crystal, I always say she's far more of a spiritual giant than I am. She challenges me about but the idea to her, the idea of being far from her parents at that time was like, no. I mean, it was, we had moved from Alabama when I was in graduate school. We'd moved from Alabama to Hot Springs. Her family was still in Memphis, Tennessee. And I mean, like she still to this day, she talks to her parents every evening. And so then early on, she was like, if I had felt it myself and certainly verbalized that to her, hey, I think God's going to want to move us to the South Pacific. I suspect, even being the spiritual giant, it would have been hard. I mean, it would have been hard for her to. But at the same time, when I told her, I said, you've got to go back. I just can't explain why you have to go back. Of course, I say she walks a whole lot closer to the Lord than I do, but and thank the Lord for that. But she was ready to go. She was supportive of it. And she immediately was like, okay, And so then 2007, the Bible school trip kind of came up through. It actually it kind of formulated from my home church in Benton. Well, of course, I had a chance to be a part of that.
Right.
And that.
It's interesting that like I have a friend who is, I'll just like recently married.
Right.
And my friend's very strong personality. And he's used to just going and doing. Yeah. And it's interesting because I had the same problem when I first got married of like, you know, about a few months into it, Courtney was just like, hey, are you going to like hang out with me at some point? Right. And I was like, oh. Yeah. I didn't necessarily like forget, but I was just like, I was so used to just going and doing with my buds and like just making decisions on my own. And I feel like there's a lot of times that, you know, I did that early on, and I'm kind of seeing that in my friend too. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I'm going to this place to do this mission work. Mm-hmm. And his wife's like, she's not like comfortable going to those places really. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that like you got that mentality changes in marriage a lot. Yeah. Did you ever struggle with that, or were y'all pretty like?
No, we were pretty much on the same page. Yeah. She's always been super supportive.
I was selfish. I just had to get over myself. Yeah, it took about a year and a half to really come to that moment.
You know, it turned into going back to Vanuatu from 2005. I went just about every other year, and strangely enough, my first Father's Day, Ryan was born in 2008. Well, I went in 2009 and I missed my first Father's Day because I was in. And I, of course, we talked about that, you know, I said, look, if we get to go, the timing for the trip is going to put us across Father's Day. And she's, of course, and you know, she hated the idea of it being a new mama. And then I was over in the South Pacific. Yeah. But that trip turned in, it was an opportunity for her dad to go. So I was there with her dad. Yeah. So, I mean, you add that to it. Not only was Ryan's father gone, so her dad was gone as well, you know. So, but she's always been super supportive of it, and it's a joke. It has turned into kind of a joke. She used to tell me after we got married early on, she always figured that she would marry a pastor, you know, just really. She just kind of always, and I said, well, sorry, you got to let you down, you know, I'm not a pastor, but then here we are now, find ourselves not, you know, we're going to be over there discipling these folks. So it's kind of funny to see it come full circle. Yeah. She's awesome. Always been super supportive, and and then now, of course, like super on board. Right. Totally. Yeah. So
Courtney and I thought I was going to be a pastor, and then we were like, surprised. Right? God's like, no, you're not. Yeah. So okay, you go 2005, you come back, and God starts moving in your heart. Yeah. Even then. So 2007, talk to me a little bit about that trip. That was a different trip than a medical trip, right?
Yeah, it was the intention for the 7 trip, and it ended up being was for Bible school. It's kind of cool how after I've kind of sat here lately and kind of
thought back,
analyzed how God has shown me little things through the whole process, and how his providence is so perfect. You know, we immediately ran into troubles in 2007 leaving Little Rock, and weather delays. We were delayed like 3 days leaving Little Rock. Well, with international flights, if you miss your flight out of Los Angeles, I mean, it feels busted, you know. I mean, so we end up getting to the island like 6 days, 6.5, 7 days later than what we had initially planned. So automatically I go into the like, okay, well, man, these 6 days, we were supposed to be in 3 days here in this village, 3 days in that. And I said, so how are we going to reach? Anyway, God worked it all out. And so we ended up doing the Bible school there in the village, at the time it was called King's Cross 1. And I was amazed to see that it was similar in regards to interest, similar. The village, the people in the surrounding villages, they knew that there was going to be Bible teaching there. And so they came and just stayed. I mean, people came to the village and spent, you know, the rest of the time that we had there.
Where would they stay? Just kind of like,
there was a little church building. They would just go out their grass mats at night and sleep in the church building. Some of them would sleep in, you know, a relative who has a little bungalow or a little house or whatever, you know, in an adjacent. They just kind of piled up, but they were there every morning. And that's awesome. My translator on that particular trip, Crystal had a translator who lived close, and she spoke really good English. And mine was this guy named David. And he had walked 5.5 hours just so he could come be translator. Somehow he'd walked from the north part of the island over to where we are in kind of the southeast side. Wow! And so in a sense, it was that you could, on the medical trip, you could see the hunger for Western medicine, something to make them feel better. Well, then you have the Bible teaching, and I still sense that same hunger, like, there's nowhere in Arkansas that somebody would walk 5 hours to come here Bible teaching. They just wouldn't do it.
Right.
So when we came home from that trip, that's when God really started wrecking. Even on that trip, I was pretty well wrecked. Like, I don't hunger for God's word like these people do.
Yeah.
And they don't even have the means to. I mean, they don't have the means to. Some of them can't read.
I was going to say, can they even read?
It's all oral. So that's why, and then that kind of feeds why they show up, because we're teaching these things, orally teaching these Bible lessons.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're teaching about Noah's Ark, Jonah and the whale, these simple stories that Ryan got at 4 years old.
Exactly.
And the room is packed with adults. And I mean, it's just like they're soaking it all in. And I told Crystal, I said, we don't understand what it means to hunger for God's word. But these people, I mean, the dude walked 5.5 hours and spent the whole week outside of his village just so he could translate for me.
Yeah. I mean, that's like when Jesus talks about drinking from the well that never runs dry. I mean, these people are really like thirsting for something, one drop of well.
What we would consider the simplest of concepts or theology ideas about God, the things that we take for granted. I mean, you hear the story of David and Goliath, and it's like, I've heard that forever.
Right.
I get the concept, I get the big picture, but for them, it's like, seriously, he did it with stones? I mean, this little dude chopped off a giant. Like, what do you mean a giant?
Right.
I mean, it's those little things that we take for granted. We miss some of those little nuances because it's such a familiar story. But for them, they may have heard it in some of their oral culture, some of their historical stories. They're often loosely mixed with stories from the Bible, but to have somebody who is obviously reading that and then teaching truth based on that, they're like, God, give me more, give me more,
So their history, I mean, just sounds like it all comes down from oral traditions, oral culture. It's like passed from generation to generation that way. What are the challenges in that you see, like in terms of going, then is there any certain like specific challenges that come to mind?
Particularly some of the challenges, they're very syncretic in their belief. And so they mix some of their customary tribal belief with threads of truth. And that gets so intertwined that you have to be very careful to dissect some of their stories and say, okay, this is absolute truth.
Yeah.
This is a little bit added to it.
And this is where that came from.
And but at the same time, you don't want to go over there and completely try to eradicate their culture, because I'm the outsider, I'm not going over there to change their culture, but to better help them understand the absolute truth.
Right.
And how that can change, not me, but how that can change their culture and change their way of thinking. And then be able to share, experiences just myself where God has taught me things that has changed my way of thinking from a Western standpoint about what church is supposed to be like and things like that.
You were saying that they have this certain belief about westernized people coming. What's that?
It's actually a cult belief, and it's called the John Frum cargo cult.
The John Frum,
F-R-U-M, John Frum, and it originated back during World War II. Vanuatu was a base for during World War II, and after the war was over, the U.S. and the Allied armies, they left just gobs and gobs of stuff, equipment, old uniforms,
stuff they didn't want to take
stuff
back.
That they weren't going to bring back. Right. And the chiefs in the primary villages there, they took that and believed that the gods, small g, were looking favorably on them and as a result blessed them with all these things. But they came from John. They didn't have names for these soldiers, but it was John from F-R-U-M America, John from America. And so that birthed this John Frum cargo cult movement. And they believe, and it's still very active and has a solid stronghold, particularly on the south part of the island, where they believe that if they're living right, if they're doing things that please the gods or please God, and of course I say little g, God,
right,
that John from America will bring them things, and that's their affirmation that they're living correctly, living right. So
it sounds like that's a challenge you have going in as well, is like making sure that like you and your family are separating, like you said, separating that truth, right. what is truth and what is kind of the untrue belief,
right?
Like,
and that's that's one of the things that one of the challenges we always faced when we would take trips and teams over there. I mean, they don't have hardly anything materialistic. Their clothing is ragtag. I mean, it's just they're very poor. So
yeah, like I'm in pajamas right now, which by the way, now that the podcast is at home and I work from home, y'all probably gonna see me in pajamas a lot still. But like this would be probably
that'd be nice. I mean, really? Yeah, that'd be nice clothes. Yeah. But so a lot of the teams, we carry stuff over there that it's going to get nasty. There's volcanic ash and it's hot. And so I carry stuff over there that if I ever have carried stuff over there with no intentions of ever bringing it back. I carry old T-shirts. Well, you have to be careful because they can even use the fact that they're getting clothes and spin that into, well, I'm living right, so I'm getting these clothes. So further feeding that John from cargo movement. And so the missionary that was there, he was always so careful when teams would come. We would leave things with him, and then as it was appropriate, he would distribute these to this man or this family, things like that.
Because you didn't want to continue.
You don't want to feed that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's something that I think a lot of people, they think, well, I can definitely, like, one way that people can help is by giving certain goods or something to this, people group somewhere. And like we see that happen a lot with what is it, the Super Bowl, the losing team's hats or whatever, and shirts
go to Haiti or whatever,
or wherever it is. And I mean, like, that would be counter.
That could cause problems. And I mean, realistically in Vanuatu, with feeding that particular cultish belief.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, it goes to show, like, you have to really understand the people. You have to understand.
Yeah, because your intentions are good. I mean, our intentions are even down to, like, we would take Bibles. I've got 15 Bibles on the shelf at the house, so we take Bibles to leave. Well, I mean, if you leave a Bible, even in your best intentions, if you leave William over there a Bible, there's a very real possibility that would stir up pride in him and say, maybe the John Frum thing is true. I am living right. I've got a Bible. You don't have a Bible. And so, I mean, that's kind of a thin line you have to tread and be able to discern when do you approach this, or when do you give that, when do you not give that.
That probably just takes experience.
Sure. And of course, the longer I've been going, the more who understands, the absolute truth, and you can go into that with them.
So then your 2007 trip, you and Crystal come back. And what are y'all's thoughts? I think you said y'all didn't really necessarily talk about it, but like it was both starting to stir in y'all's hearts. That
I think realistically we were kind of fearful of verbalizing it, but we both had a sense that God had knit a connection there with people there in the White Sands area on Tana, and of course, and then Ryan. So we got kind of I maybe more so than her. I mean, our focus kind of shifted. We had been married 7 years and didn't have kids, and I had finished school. She had finished with her dietetic internship. We were both working full time. Things were. Oh, it was great. Married life was great. Moving right along, just American dream,
right? Yeah,
and in the absence of the kids, and so God blessed us with Crystal was able to get pregnant, and we had Ryan in 2008, and so then her focus naturally shifted to being a mama to Ryan, which should have, and so I think kind of for her focus went there.
Sure.
Rightfully so.
Sure. Yeah.
I still had, a desire to be involved, absolutely, to be involved in whatever was going on in Tana. So
you kind of kept up.
Oh, yeah. And then, of course, then I went back in 2009. And, missed my first Father's Day. That trip was different. It was more, I call it a grunt work trip. I mean, it was just 5 men, and we went specifically to minister to David, the missionary that was there.
Yeah.
And man, we hauled dirt. We moved coconuts. I mean, just grunt work. There wasn't really necessarily a ministry type focus for the people. It was more for David, the missionary that was there. And
when y'all, so going back to like having kids and everything, did y'all? I think Ryan's the only child. Is that right?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
He's our only one. We have Crystal experienced 2 miscarriages.
Oh, really?
Yeah. After Ryan, and it's pretty difficult, in those days. I know that was particularly harder on her, from a mama's standpoint.
I was going to ask. So Courtney and I also experienced a miscarriage at the beginning of last year, 2018. I was going to ask kind of what was your experience on that side? Because my experience was I didn't have as deep a connection with Jet as Courtney did. Courtney had a very physical connection that I think created a bond that was stronger than what I had. And it was very early on as well. And it is, I think, still to this day, I do have these thoughts time to time of like, man, I wonder what it would be like to have an almost 2-year-old now, or almost, and like, okay, they would be doing this. What would he look like? Things like that. Yeah. I don't get too upset. But obviously Courtney took it pretty hard. And still there's definitely, like right now in a couple of, I think the 21st was the due date for Jet. And so, I've been asking other people that have kind of gone through a similar experience from your perspective, obviously, because Crystal has her story that she has, but from your side, what was your experience?
It's probably similar to yours. I mean, of course, super excited about the potential of another kid. Our dream was to always have 2 kids. We wanted 2, and ideally we could have had a boy and a girl. We had names picked out. I mean, we had been married 8 years before we ever really started trying to have kids, and then had Ryan. So Crystal and I are both pretty well type A personalities, so we kind of had a plan, what we thought was a plan. Ryan came along, and that was great. I wanted a boy first, and she was cool with that. And of course, you're cool with whatever comes along.
Sure,
I mean, if you get to pick, I wanted the boy
actually
first.
wanted a girl first.
Did you?
Yeah. I was like, it'd be cool to have a girl first, because I was always the oldest boy, and I was like, it'd be good to have a girl first. But
so went along there, I'm horrible. I don't really even remember kind of time frame. Crystal could tell you. I mean, no doubt, she could tell you the day she knew, the day that she lost the baby. And
I'm similar to you. I don't remember. I remember August 21st being like the due date. At least I know that that's the week of it. And so, but I don't do as well with other dates. But that's actually what Courtney and I got tattoos. It was actually a very crazy experience, because Courtney and I went to the doctor's office because she had to go through some things, and we came back, and my parents were watching the kids, so we could kind of have some time. I think I was really nervous that it would drive us apart, and I was really praying. I was like, God, I have no idea what to do or what to say. I don't understand where she is, and I just want to support her. That was the prayer that I was lifting up. And I was sitting on the toilet, and she barges into the bathroom and goes, "We're getting tattoos." And I was like,
okay, let's go.
She has always been against tattoos because her dad was against tattoos. So it was like, and I was like, excuse me? Like, 1, I'm on the toilet. 2, like, so she was like, "We're getting tattoos. I want a tattoo." Well, she said, I want to get a tattoo, and I want to like do it now. And I'm like, again, I'm on the toilet. 2, but like, sure. What do you? And she's like, "I don't know. I want a tattoo to remind myself to remember, and to kind of commemorate Jet. And I was like, that is a great idea. And so a friend of ours kind of helped us with the design a little bit. Mine's kind of faded a little bit, and hers is on the opposite wrist, and it's really dark. And when we hold hands, they actually join together.
That's cool.
And it looks like mine's kind of the shadow, and hers has got
that's cool.
the more, it was really, and honestly, from that point on, it actually got us talking about it. And I think Jet's life brought us closer, even closer. Because for a while there, I was like, I feel like everything, it was going really well, living the American dream. And it was kind of plateauing a bit in our marriage, where like things are good, but I'm like, is this it? Like, is this as much as I can love Courtney?
Right.
And is this as much as she can love me? And she just like, this just took us to a whole different place and of understanding each other. And you know, like on this side of it, she was like, because I was telling her, like, I felt like it brought us closer together. She was like, I felt so isolated during a lot of those months. And I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. Like, I hate that. Like, I want you to feel not isolated, because I am here for you. And so like, it opened up so many great conversations that I think so many people, it's the opposite happens to them in that type of situation.
Yeah. I think Crystal would say, and I don't, again, I'm horrible. I know it was much, much more difficult for her than me. It was difficult, but her difficulty came from knowing the loss. Right. I mean, it's like you said, that she had that connection. She had that physical connection. Right. I mean, she was carrying, she was housing, she was taking care of this baby that had been created. And for me, so for her, it was the loss of that. Like she has said that it feels like she failed to do the job that she was supposed to do. And of course, those are things that didn't really realize until after the fact, that after we were able to kind of talk about it. But I was like you, I didn't know what to say. And for me, my struggle came in watching her struggle, and there was nothing I could do to fix it. Yeah. And when I would attempt to kind of reach out and fix it in a way that I thought was good, or would accomplish making her feel better, that's not at all what she needed. And I was too stupid to realize that. Yeah. Stupid me. Yeah. I just didn't. I just didn't know how. And after the fact, she has come back and we've talked it out. And she has told me, she said, I know that I pushed you away. And I don't know that I necessarily felt pushed away. I felt helpless. I didn't know what the heck to say. I didn't know what to do, because I wasn't, what I was experiencing was totally different. I was hurting for her. She was hurting for the fact that there was the loss. Yeah. And I hurt in that regard. I hated it, but I hated it more for her than the whole idea of the loss altogether, which I don't, that's about the best way I can, I don't know. No, I just didn't know what to do for her. Exactly. And I think one of the hardest parts was, Brody got like psychic abilities. Like we didn't know we were pregnant with Sadie yet. And he woke up 2 weeks before we like found out and goes, I'm gonna have a baby sister. And we're like, whatever, dude. Like, you're like 3, calm down. And so then like 2 weeks later we found out we're pregnant, and it's a baby sister. And 2 weeks before we found out we're pregnant with Jet, he goes, we were in New York, he was with my parents, and my dad calls and goes, is there something you want to tell us? And I was like, what are you talking about? He was like, well, Brody woke up this morning and said he's gonna have a baby brother. I'm like, okay, that's weird. Like, because the first time I was like, okay, that's just weird. And so then 2 weeks later we found out, and Brody was just so excited. And I think that was probably the hardest part for me, was telling him, and the disappointment on his face really stuck with me. And so, I think in that moment, the best I knew to do was like listen, and Courtney engaged. I think the tattoo experience, we went to the tattoo parlor, and the tattoo artist there had also had a miscarriage the year before. And like, I have this photo of
Courtney getting her tattoo and the tattoo artist, and they had to stop because they were both crying and they were both talking to each other. And that was just like such a God moment of like, that's what we needed. Yeah. And I think just one of my mentors, Sid, who I had on the podcast earlier, was like, you just need to listen to her and you need to support her and you need to not try to force anything. Like you're going to want to really bad to try to fix it, but you need to just listen. Yeah. That's honestly like probably one of the biggest things you could do is ask, how can I help? And just listen. And
I think too, I came to a better realization of that after going through it the second time. Yeah. And I was able to understand more clearly the hurt that she was feeling and that all I needed, I'm available. If you want to talk about it, great. If you don't, I love you. Whatever.
I'm here for you.
Stay in bed. If you need to stay, whatever.
Yeah. I got it here. I got it here.
I got me and Ryan. We got it. You know, kind of a thing.
Yep. Yeah.
So it was much. I understand. I'm not gonna say it's much easier the second time go around, but I understoed it better.
You were able to like support her a little bit better.
Support. Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So
God's been good. It's kind of, we still talk about it. And like I said, Crystal knows, she knows the dates when the first one would have come and the second one, she's got the dates down and she'll remind me, because there'll be, I'll notice that she's kind of having a humdrum day and she'll say, well, today would have been whatever. Right. And, but same it's kind of neat though. My family is big. It's fairly, I'm one of three. And, of course my brother has 2 girls and my sister has 3 kids. And when all the cousins are all together, it's a wad of kids.
It's an ordeal.
Yeah. And, Ryan sees his cousins, squabbling about the different things. And he'll always has some sort of commentary. He's pretty intuitive on the ride home from Benton. But and so there from time to time we'll ask him, so what do you think about it? Are you okay that you're the only kid? Right. Yeah. And he said, yeah, I kind of like just doing things my way. Yeah. And so which is kind of cool for us because Crystal and I both and Ryan, now that we realize all 3 of us kind of that type A personality, we've got our own little routines and the way we do things. And he's just kind of slid right into that same little routine, pattern stuff that we find ourselves in. So it's awesome. It is kind of cool on the backside of it to see how God's worked. Yeah, definitely.
So going back to like your kind of journey in this. Yeah. You came back from 2007. You went 2009. You were saying it was more of kind of
ministering to the missionary there. Yeah.
Right. Like the grunt work type work. That was the Father's Day one, right?
Right.
You and her dad both missed.
Yeah. From the top of the volcano, we're taking a picture. Happy Father's Day. You see these when you come back, kind of thing.
Yeah. I bet you love that. Yeah. So then you come back from that one. Is that when y'all start talking about things or what did when did that start kind of coming about?
Off and on we did. And then I got to go back in 2012. The missionary on the field had found out early in 2012 that he had cancer. And so he came off the field. And so when I went in 2012, it was an odd trip. It was just a man and a woman from my home church in Benton and then myself. So it was just 3 of us. And the missionary was in the hospital in Rogers, Arkansas, or at the VA. Where's the VA? In Fayetteville, I guess, the big VA up there. Sure. Anyway, he was up there. We had gone to visit him prior to going in 2012, and he had a few things he wanted us kind of tying up loose ends for him, his kind of end of life things that he wanted the villagers there to know. And it was kind of a daunting task to have to carry, carry this.
That's kind of like carrying I would imagine carrying a letter from Paul to
right. That's kind of, and it's funny. Me and Missy, it's Bill and Missy McAdoo from Benton. We all 3 kind of talked about that. So it's like, we kind of feel like we're delivering these final thoughts, and which, I guess in essence we were, but that trip also included, it also included a little stop at an adjacent, an island before you get to Tana. You fly over the biggest island there in the Tafea province, which is the island is Eromanga, and it's not terribly inhabited. There's an airport on the western and eastern sides both, a little grass runway. I mean, it's very, remote, very primitive. But David had received word that a chief at Ipota, which is a little village on the eastern side, he wanted to donate land for a Baptist church. There's no Baptist church on the island. And so kind of because of some of their ceremonies, their traditions, the chief has to donate the land. And
I was going to ask.
The villagers have to recognize that. It's kind of a ceremonial type thing,
Okay. So you can't just go like purchase land, right?
No, you can't.
The chief actually has to give you
that's right.
part of it. Okay.
Yeah, you can't. Being a white man, you can't. I couldn't ever purchase land there. The chief has to grant that.
Gotcha.
And of course, whatever the chief says, that's what goes. That's it. That's the final word.
Yeah.
And anyway, we'd gotten word. David had gotten word, which was kind of always his long-term vision, was to start seeing churches on these adjacent islands, being started by national men, of course.
Right.
And he had worked a long time training and discipling laymen in these little surrounding villages on Tana ultimately for that purpose, to reach these outer islands.
Right.
He got word through one of the men on the north part of Tana that
oh, hang on, this is such a we're at my house moment. Devin, can you go turn the timer off and turn the crock pot, I'm not kidding, on low? You might switch the camera just to like him now.
You better get that straight.
And then you can fix the other camera there. I kid you not, I'd forgotten all about this, but there's something in the crock pot.
You have one job.
And I know, and I've got one job, and that's to turn the timer off on the stove and to turn the crock pot on low. And I'm not kidding. This is we're doing the podcast live, folks. That's right. We're not editing this out because why do that? This is real life.
Right. That's what it is.
Working from home, though, it is convenient that I can turn the crock pot on low.
That's right. You got to keep
once
the crock
it's ready.
Pot right.
But yeah. Cool. So
yeah, we were able
to get land, or he was donating land.
He donated land. We got word, and so David asked us to go be part of this ceremony where the chief donated that land, so it would be official. And so so we made a short stop on Eromanga, spent a couple nights, and just cool how God worked it out. We met like the chief of all chiefs on Eromanga Island. He happened to be just at a village right there close to the airport where we landed. And so made a connection there, and I made a connection with his son, who is big in the schools. He and I Facebook back and forth, fairly regularly now. But so yeah, in 2012, we did that stop short in Eromanga, and then we went to Tana and were able to kind of touch base with the little village churches that were there, kind of giving them David's, final regards kind of thing. And man, they were,
what's it like delivering that? I mean,
it was rough. They're really guarded. They don't show a lot of emotion,
right?
Just in general, it's a kind of a thing, a matter of dignity. I don't know that I've ever seen a man over there cry ever.
Yeah.
Or really even, I mean, they just get really quiet and withdrawn. They pull themselves back from the big group, and they just kind of fade off into the darkness, so to speak. They're not going to let you see any major emotion.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was obvious that they were wrecked. David had been there 22, 23 years.
Yeah,
and
a long time.
A long time.
A lot of investment.
Deep connections there. Yeah, I mean, huge.
Yeah.
But so it was difficult to deliver that news, but at the same time, it was kind of encouraging in a sense that they felt, okay, it was important enough for us to come back and deliver that. Now, we could have sent them a text message, or we could have made a phone call and told them, but they place so much weight on that face-to-face conversation. Yeah. And so it was difficult, but at the same time, you felt a sense of encouragement, to kind of talk to them. Of course, they wanted to, immediately were wondering, is there going to be another missionary come? And so that's when God really started pressing on me, like, so there's nobody over here now, so, I've kind of been planting the seed in you since 2007. Right. What are you going to do with it?
Right.
What are you going to listen to me? Are you going to, and so really after that 2012 trip, that's when things really started getting, I mean, it started weighing pretty heavy on me.
Yeah.
And kind of started trying to process through, like, what if, you know?
Yeah.
Well,
because you're someone that plans a lot, right? Like you're someone that
to a fault. That's horrible. I know.
So it's like, I imagine, because Courtney's that way. I'm not as much that way. Courtney's definitely that way. And so there's definitely a point where like, I need to make sure that Courtney's comfortable with long-term plans of any type of plans like that. So how did that process start? So you start asking what if. How do you get to the point in your mind with knowing how you are of like, okay, yes, I'm ready. Can you kind of walk me through what that was like?
Of course, I immediately started thinking, okay, so if this was the case, what are things that would need to happen? And it was I could kind of come up with like a general idea of what I thought would need to happen, but it was just like I could get one or two things that I thought needed to happen, and it would be just like, well, you know, I don't know what's next, and I would kind of try to put it out of my mind. And I think looking back, it was me trying to convince myself, well, I'm not getting a clear word of what's next, so maybe I'm mishearing from God. Maybe that's not what He wants. Of course, then the big cyclone hit in 2000. That Cyclone Pam completely obliterated the direct hit on Tana in 2000. I believe it was 2015, early 2015.
Wait, Tana, the island you're going to?
Yeah, completely
obliterated the island.
The largest cyclone largest cyclone to ever make landfall anywhere hit Tana Island in 2015.
The one you're going to live on.
Yeah, that's where we're going to live.
Cool. I just make sure
that's the one. Thanks for reminding me, Satan.
Yeah, no? I'm just saying. No, I'm just saying. I want to make sure that everybody listening that's clear.
That's right. So, of course, makes the news, and that's all I hear. And
I'm sure friends and family are like, you're joking, right?
I get texts and emails. Are you seeing this? Are you seeing this?
Yeah,
I am seeing it. And I'm watching the video to see if there's anybody I recognize. You know,
right?
Of course, on Tana, we were getting video from Port Vila, which was the capital, which is westernized tourist attraction. Australian folks and New Zealanders go there for vacation. I mean, so all the news feed was coming from there, and occasionally you get this remote helicopter video from Tana, and I mean, just from the helicopters, it's completely obliterated.
Yeah. Well, and since it's a small enough island, I'm sure you're able to recognize.
Oh yeah,
like
I absolutely
I know where that is.
Yeah, landmarks and things, and you know they don't. Automatically, I'm thinking they don't have the means to get on a plane and get to Port Vila where there's concrete buildings. You know, is everybody okay? Did it?
Right.
You know, and of course, no connection. Don't know if anybody's well, if they're not. So months went by that I had tried reaching out to certain men there and. With no reciprocation. I didn't hear anything back. And so we put a trip together. An acquaintance of mine, actually a man that I had gone on my first trip with in 2005.
Is this the circumcision guy or this?
No, it was yes, different. It was. No, it was a family doctor. That guy.
Yeah.
He had made a trip earlier, but before we were able to get over there.
Gotcha.
And was able to kind of relay some info. These people are okay. These people, it didn't go so well for them, things like that. So we're able to get some info. And then we put a team together. I don't even remember what, I want to say it might have been in June of 2015, and a couple people from Texas, and then some more people from Northwest Arkansas, and we went over and did some kind of more rebuilding type things.
Right.
We're able to take some funds that had been collected here, and we were able to buy bulk rice and distribute to 10 of the little villages there. Right. So kind of some. Not necessarily recovery work, but kind of some restoration work after that cyclone. And
what did that cyclone do for you? I mean, it seems to had the impact that cyclone had was more like, okay, it created urgency, I guess.
It did. It created I couldn't get there fast enough.
Right.
But I didn't, it brought to mind, it made me aware of how deeply emotionally connected I am with those people, because I was hurting for them, just watching it all unfold, and I had the dread, like, where is Royal? Where did he go? Because being in the village, there's nowhere in his village he could have gone and been safe. Nowhere.
Yeah.
The houses are made out of bamboo and thatch. I mean, it's just there was nowhere safe. They had to have made it to Linical, which was I mean, Royal has to come down out of the mountain 45 minutes.
Well, did they have any warning that this was coming?
There was some warning, yeah.
Okay.
And of course, it's, you know how it is when you don't have a lot of resources, you figure out how to learn things.
Sure.
And so they're aware. I mean, if it starts looking a certain way, they think, okay, we better make sure there's not a cyclone close, you know. Gotcha. So I mean, but of course, with the magnitude of that Cyclone Pam,
right?
I mean, the news was everywhere. There were warnings. They said after we got there and were able to talk to him, they said that they had, you know,
plenty of time,
adequate warning. And so as a result, I mean, on Tana, it's the best I know, there was only like 2 people that died on the whole island of Tana.
Oh, okay. And
I mean, it was, when I say obliterate, I'm talking completely obliterated, leaves stripped off. And it was blew down concrete buildings, you know. The 1 or 2 that actually passed away, it was because a concrete wall fell on this grandma. It ended up not someone that I knew, but
right.
Of course, you know, it's small enough that so-and-so knows this one, you know.
Right, yeah.
But I felt from here, it got to the point where I couldn't turn on the news here because it was always the headline. And I couldn't see it because it stirred up worry, you know.
Yeah.
And that sense of urgency. So when we got to go in 2015, man, I couldn't get there quick enough. Like,
yeah, hey,
we're going to go do some restoring work. And I was like, yeah, well, count me in. Absolutely. I'm going. So,
right.
And we were able to do some building, and it was encouraging. Of course, in the absence, David had passed away already, and so there was not that solid line of communication that we had for years before.
So you're kind of having to build up communication like that again,
right? And we were able to do that and reach out to the people that get in touch with the ones that we need to get in touch with, and orchestrate the plan. Ended up staying in Royals Village at the top of the mountain and building a kind of a school/church building, rebuilding what was there.
Yeah.
And, it's cool. I mean,
that was in 2015.
That was in 2015. Yeah. And did it with that was a trip. It was kind of cool. As far as the building stuff goes, we needed 3 sticks of lumber. That, of course, everybody on the island needed whatever lumber they could get. And there's this guy named Tom Saute. We had carried new chainsaws and some new tools with us on that trip. And this guy named Tom, he said, well, I can cut you the lumber. I said, with what? The sawmill that we had used years before, it was smashed, you know, you couldn't use it. Tom was like, I'll cut it with a chainsaw. I'm like, this joker's fixing to cut a ceiling joist with a chainsaw. I'm talking about I wish I had a way to show a picture. He cut a ceiling joist out of a big old, we call it bloodwood. It's this red wood, but he cut a ceiling joist that we used in that church, but with a chainsaw, and it couldn't have been any more square. We put a square on it because I thought there's no way that joker was square. I was like, how in the world did he do that with a chainsaw? So it's just little cool things like that. You're like, God gave him the ability to cut a square. Yeah, that's what it is. But so we were able to minister to them in that, and then it was then I started praying, okay, God, there's not a missionary here. You know, you kind of got a sense that things were, not falling flat is that's the word that Eric, one of the men there where we're going to be, he used it, that some of the churches had fallen flat. That's just the way he described it without a better word to use it. And it really, it's just, they were lacking in any sort of encouragement. And some of the men that had been the layman leaders in the village, they'd kind of backed out of that role for various reasons. You know, nothing, just really nothing different than like we see here. People kind of backslide. You know, kind of get out of the. It's
interesting because that kind of sounds. I mean, you know, Paul talks to Philippians and the Ephesians about like, hey, like the very similar experience, right? Like encouraging them, but then also challenging them and being like, this isn't the way that we taught you. Like, this isn't the truth. And so it sounds like it's that work that maybe currently is kind of that's kind of what has thrust us to where we are. Yeah.
So came back in 15, and I told Crystal, I was like, it's time for she was wanting to go back. She had been wanting to go back. And of course we had Ryan, you know.
Yeah. How old was Ryan in 2015?
In 2015 he was what is that, 7 years old, 7 or 8 years old. Yep. And Crystal was kind of like, I can't take a 7-year-old, 8-year-old over here to this. It's something that she had battled with as a mama. Yeah. But it was just like we were. I guess it was 2017. We were we were taking the Experiencing God course here at Crossgate, and Dave White was leading it. And there was, I can't remember, Crystal could tell you exactly that one of the particular moments during that study, I think it was Henry Blackaby said, you know, I can't remember exactly how it said, but basically it made Crystal think, you know, God gave me Ryan. Do you think I can't take care of him? Kind of a thing. And so it was then she was just like, okay, Ryan's got to go. And so in 2017, we planned a trip and just the three of us went.
Okay, so in 2017, Ryan
that was
got
Ryan's,
to go.
Yeah, Ryan got to go. That was
nice.
his first trip. Yeah,
nice.
And of course, from I was excited. I was like, I had no worries. I knew he would get over there and he'd be just like one of the kids over there. I didn't have any concerns at all. But Crystal and her, as she calls it, her mama heart. She was like, oh, I got to keep an eye on him, make sure he doesn't fall off the edge of the mountain, make sure you know all these things that you know that
he's not used to being on mountains or anything.
Right. You know, watch falling coconuts and things like that.
40-foot drop, he'll be right. The other kids do just
volcano.
fine.
He can't go close to the volcano, you know, kind of thing. And so when we got there, you know, within 10 minutes, Ryan was out of sight. We were in the village. They had this kind of a welcoming ceremony. It's a huge deal when you bring your family to them. It's such a huge deal that that you trust them enough to host you and your family. I'd been there several times, you know, and they were excited. Crystal was coming back for the second time, but to bring my kid, you know, my child and entrust them with his care, you know, for that week or 2 weeks that we were there. It's just, it just speaks, those action things, they speak so loudly to them. You can tell them you love them and that you care for them. But when they see little things, it's just the fact that I brought my family, my whole family, that was such a huge thing to them. But like we got there, and of course, you know, they were welcoming and they were excited. Ryan was there, and Ryan, like 10 minutes after we had the little welcome ceremony, we couldn't, like, Ryan was gone. Where is he? You know, and then no, he couldn't have gone too far. There's a little village over here that was okay to go in, but Crystal kind of had one of those moments, like, okay, I hadn't seen Ryan, you know, in 10, 15 minutes. And the lady that I call Mama, she's my island mama. Emily, she went up to Crystal. She said, Miss Crystal, she said, you have nothing to worry about. And Crystal's like, oh, I know. I just like to know where she said, if he's with the children, he's safe. They will not let him get hurt. Yeah. And Crystal's like, okay, God, you got it. I'm not worrying about it. And so, of course, in the rest of the trip, it was awesome. The rest of the week,
that really comforted her.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I mean, it really does sound like the way you describe the people is that they take care of each other, and
we're one of them now.
Exactly. I mean, and that's what, like, they've accepted you, and that you would trust them to bring your family here. It sounds like. That's amazing.
No, it's pretty humbling, really, to kind of see a true picture of what community and what a church, the Acts church, looks like. I mean, that whole concept of meeting together daily, breaking bread together. I mean, they're doing that. Yeah. Not necessarily that. I mean, they have learned that because of David's pioneer work that was there. I mean, but they just naturally, that's just what they do.
Their culture.
That's their culture. They love on one another. Yeah. And so for us to kind of be absorbed into that as if we had always been there. Right. I mean, that's, you know, that's just another one of those moments of affirmation that God's given us. Like, I mean, we feel disconnected here now.
That's exactly what I was going to ask.
We feel more connected. Like, we're antsy to get there.
Because since you and I have been talking about this since February, I've been watching, I've been listening to, you know, you talk about this to other people, and I've gotten the sense that you feel more like a foreigner here. Yeah. And you're like, I'm dying to get home. Yeah. And like your family, I've felt that from as well. And that is, I mean, that is a God thing.
100%.
Because it would just have to be, especially for, you know, being someone that's a planner type, and just someone that with Crystal worrying about, but then like being like, all right, God's got this. Like, the comfort there is, he's the comforter, right? Like his spirit is the comforter that's beyond understanding. And that is I've had that kind of moment with Courtney and I, like a couple of times, the decisions that I thought were just going to like there was no way they were going to go over well.
Right.
That like they just like there was this peace and this comfort, and it was like this is right. We need to step into this because God's doing this, and it would be a sin for us not to.
Yeah.
That's definitely just been awesome to see.
Yeah. I remember one night after we got back from that trip, it was pretty glaring, obvious that we were supposed to be there. Of course, Ryan wasn't a believer; he wasn't saved.
That's what I was going to ask about Ryan and kind of
how that unfolded. It's another one of those for us, one of those huge moments.
So he wasn't a believer when y'all went in 2017.
No, he wasn't.
Okay.
He wasn't. And he was just saved this year, and I baptized him in April.
Yeah.
So
a few months
he was
ago.
saved. Yeah, March, sometime in March. And
so what I'd like to talk about his journey to getting to that point, and then I would like to also talk about just in general how your family is dealing with the decision to go as well. But specifically, I'm interested to hear about Ryan and kind of his attitude. Ryan's
was one of those blatant in your face answer to prayer. We had, which we try to, as consistently as we can, have a little family prayer time, quiet time before we go to bed every night.
Yeah.
And Crystal is way more diligent. I said she's the spiritual giant. She's way more diligent.
I'm the same way. Courtney's great about.
My intentions are great, and I want to do that. It's not a lack of desire, but Crystal's like, okay, now it's time. I'm like, sweet, let's do it.
Exactly.
I get to lead out in that, which is great. But that's why we're married, because God knew I needed her.
Yeah. But I'm so with you.
We had that. Of course, Ryan wasn't a believer. We came back, and Crystal and I, we knew, and we had done the Experiencing God course, and we knew. I mean, it was that crisis of belief. We knew that that's what God was wanting us to do. And we had resolved and we had put our, as the phrase we say at CrossCut, we'd put our yes on the table.
Right.
And we were moving our hands out of the way. If it was a yes, it was a yes. Okay, what's next?
Had y'all talked to Ryan about it yet?
No, we hadn't talked to him yet.
Okay.
And but we had got to that. We kind of had progressed to that point. We've got to tell Ryan kind of what God's wanting us to do. And of course, Chris and I talked like, well, he's not a believer. You know how he's going to respond, and Satan's going to use that to try to discourage us. And we had already worked through, the difficulty of we're going to be away from family. We're going to be disconnected from church that we love. The things that God had been blessed with. A 17-year career with an unbelievable retirement. Right. Crystal had a dream job at National Park as a dietitian. All the American dream things were. I mean, we had our 10-year-old son who was just like us, right? And I mean, we were rocking like everything was great. Got a fishing boat. I was fishing as much as I wanted. All those things that I thought, sweet. Once I get a fishing boat, everything's great. We'll ski. We'll spend time. Everything was just like we had dreamed it to be. Yeah. And so we got to the spot. Okay, we got to bring Ryan into the discussion, believer or not. It's not fair to him. And so we did. We told him one night that what we felt like God was wanting us to do. And
when was this?
I guess would have been late 2017. I don't even remember
towards
the day.
Fall or so in 2017.
Yeah, late fall probably. Yeah. And of course Ryan was like immediately, he said, I don't want to move to Tana.
So he
had a wonderful time. I mean, he loved it, and he made unbelievable friends over there. A little boy named Esron. And another little boy named Pong and Seal, these three little boys that he really connected with the whole time. And so we brought him in what we felt like God was wanting us to do. They don't have anybody there. Tried to explain it as best we could, but still in our mind expecting him to balk, because
walls up.
Yeah. Why would I? One, he's not a believer. Two, the things that we had already worked through, he said he would miss his cousins. He'd miss his Noni and Plo.
He's just starting to work through.
He's working through what we've already worked through,
right.
And of course we acknowledge, I understand. And he was upset. And I told him, and Crystal told him, said, well, we just have to pray that God makes it obvious. Try to instill in him that idea of going to God with everything, and then waiting to hear from him, and being okay with waiting to hear from him. Yeah. And so that's kind of what we had shared with him. We this is what we feel like, and my responsibility as dad and as husband is to do what God wants us to do. to, and doesn't always make sense, but try to explain it as generically as we could to him,
Yeah.
And of course, he hit us right back. I'll miss my cousins. I won't get to play baseball. I wanted to be able to go kayaking with you, Daddy, and all those things that I had already kind of processed through. But it was still just like, I get to go through the, think
rehash all of that over again yourself. Yeah.
And so we prayed, good night, and whatever. And then when Crystal and I left Ryan's room, we both said nearly at the same time, we just have to pray God would clearly change his heart. And so, and then I think in the back of my mind, I was saying, well, he's not even a believer. Does he even know how to hear from God? And then it was just like, I thought, well, why am I limiting God if he wants to speak to him? Yeah. And so seriously, dude, it's one of those moments. It kind of really was kind of a deal sealer for us. That was on a Sunday night. We had that conversation. And on Tuesday, we had family quiet time, getting ready to, say our prayer. And he said, Daddy, if we don't go over there, he said, how are Seal and Pong and them, how are they going to know about God? And I looked at Crystal and she looked at me, and we were just like, it's okay. We'll try to keep ourselves together and say, well, Ryan, you're right. That's what we feel like God's telling us. I mean, we just, it's not always kind of rehashed all that. It's not always an easy decision to do what God wants you to do, but he's trying to grow something in us that's going to make us look more like him. And that's just kind of how we ended up when Crystal and I got outside of his room, and both of us were just looking at him and just like, well, holy cow, how about that for an answered prayer, dead in your face. Just, and it's one of those deals where I joke, leading a small group, I've always said, I'm one of those people like, I can hear from God, but it's really good if he'll set the bush on fire. Yeah. If it's really good if he'll put the cloud out in the sky. If
there's the sign, I just need the sign.
And so we got out, and Crystal said, well, I think she asked me, she said, well, how's that for your burning bush? And I'm like, how do you can't argue with that. But and so interesting enough, I mean, he wasn't even a believer, but God showed us through that, like, look, you just asked me what you need, and I'm confirming. I can even use an unbeliever to show you what I want you to do. Yeah. And so since then, of course, thank the Lord, Ryan was saved, and through.
I think you were telling me too, he had a stipulation about.
He did. He said we can go, but I've got to have a horse. He said I got to get a horse. I'm like, oh well, okay. But it's strangely enough, dude, how that has worked out. Ryan has been going to a friend of ours that I grew up with and used to rodeo with my granddad and my uncle. Has horses up in Benton, and Ryan's been going for the last 3 weeks. Really? This lady's been giving him riding lessons, horsemanship stuff, like the grunt work of the horse, having a horse. Yeah. She's been doing it and hadn't been charging anything. Just like that. I feel like that's my contribution to y'all's work. Let me just teach him about that. And so, that's awesome. I mean, dude, he's like all over it.
Oh, I bet he's pumped.
Oh, he is. It's every day. I'm going back up this way. I got a new girth. I got this for my saddle. It's kind of been cool how that's. I got even in that, we jokingly say that was Ryan's stipulation, but God's putting people in place. It's like, so if you do have a horse, he needs to know how to do this. And people just out of the woodworks, hey, I want to show Ryan this. I want to do this. So it's been kind of cool to see that even.
And were there any other, being a planner, I'm sure even though you were trusting God, you've got a list, right, in the back of your head, like, I'm going to need this to be able to go. I'm going to need this to be able to go, and this. Was there anything else?
Initially, I kind of had this checklist out. Yeah. But I also, after we went through Experiencing God, I had the opportunity to lead Experiencing God the following semester. And God really, he really kind of rocked me in my desire to have everything lined out. And my self-imposed need for a perfect plan. Yeah. So it's caused me to kind of back up and just get myself out of the way and say, okay, we're going, you show me what's next. Yeah. And that's been terribly uncomfortable for me. Yeah. Crystal has been incredibly encouraging through that process. But that's just something that God has crafted in me over the last 6 to 8 months, where I don't know. I don't know, as far as like support stuff goes, we've got some level of support to go,
right?
But we're not fully funded to go. What I feel like we need, what I would consider fully funded, but it doesn't change the fact that we're supposed to go. And
right,
I say I made the mistake. The first time we went through Experiencing God, some of those video clips that go with it about these people who have gone off to these little communities and to plant a church or to minister to a group of people here in the U.S. And there was one guy in particular, I don't even remember his name, but we went to some place in West Virginia. There wasn't a church. He didn't have a supporting church, didn't have necessarily the funds, but he heard clearly that God was wanting him to go.
Right.
And so he just went, and then God orchestrated a perfect plan once he got there. I guess it's not a mistake, but at that moment, I prayed, God, that's the kind of faith that I want. I want the kind of faith that just says, okay, if this is what you're showing me, then this is what I'll do.
Yes, on the table.
That's it. Yep. And get myself out of the way. Yeah. And so God has put me to the test on that. And it's been cool. It's been cool for him he knows the type of confirmation that I need. And so little things that he showed us in the last 6 to 8 months, so that I'll keep my hands out of the way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's neat and it provides this, really, it's almost like an unnatural sense of peace.
Yeah.
That I don't have to orchestrate it. I mean, there are logistical things that I know needs to happen, and there are things that I need to do, to be able to take the next step and move this direction,
like a passport or whatever.
And those things, I mean, it's little things like that. They're just kind of falling into place.
Yeah.
And when they fall into place, I say, okay, that's what's next.
Going on the next.
So it's been really freeing to not have to worry myself of it. And it's like God's telling me, for 45 years you've worried yourself, over all the persnickety details. See how much peace you can have by just doing it yourself, just doing it with the way I want it done.
Right. So I think there was you were talking about, because you went this past February, did you go?
February of this year.
And I think one of the big things that I had overheard you talking about was where y'all were going to live.
Yeah.
You didn't know that going into the trip this past time. Can you talk about the trip this past time and then kind of what happened?
Yeah.
there?
And so got to go this February of this year. And it's kind of a wild deal. I have to share because it's how it all worked out. Typically a round trip ticket costs somewhere in the neighborhood of $3,000, which, I mean,
holy cow,
for round trip. I mean, it's crazy, and particularly in our winter, it's their summer there. So it's holiday time for them. So the airline prices are, double what they typically are.
Crazy.
Normally we would go in March, June for us, which is their winter. That's their off season. So the tickets are not horrible.
Yeah.
But this time it was one of those deals where here's the window of dates that we could go. And of course, it was during their holiday time. I just happened to get online one day and see that they had a fair sale,
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, sweet. Let's check these. So there were 2 blocks of dates that we could go. One of them fell within that ticket sales date.
Nice.
And so I went ahead and booked tickets, and didn't make sense. I thought, I wasn't budgeting for $3,000 this early in the year, kind of a thing. And, but I had a sense that this is when we were supposed to go. And so I just stepped out in faith and booked the tickets. And Rashto texted me. It literally,
he's our missions pastor at Crossgate.
I'd been visiting with him, and kind of he was hoping to be able to go just to kind of for some logistics and some information about the work over there. Turns out he couldn't go. And so I had texted him, here's the dates. And then he texted, let me check on it, and back and forth, and didn't hear anything from him for a couple of days. So I went ahead and booked the tickets. And there was like the last little bunch. The way I booked them is a little, you have to book different legs of the flight just because it's the logistics of it. Anyway,
right. I'm sure you got to go to like Australia.
Yeah, right. We go from here to Los Angeles to Fiji to Port Vila, and then a whole separate set ticket from Port Vila to Tana, different airlines.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I bought bought the last ticket for Sean and I. And when I clicked the last ticket, put it all on our credit card, and I knew that the church was going to cover Sean's expense. I knew that. Literally, I had time to get up from my computer, go use the bathroom, and then my phone blew up. Who's texting me this afternoon? It was Saturday afternoon. And I looked at it. It was a text from Rashto. Hey, I'm not going to be able to go, but he said, there's money in the missions fund to take care of all the expenses for you and Sean. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, God, you just needed me to hit purchase kind of a thing. Because literally within 3 minutes, it was that I got that text. I was like, okay. That's awesome. So why in the heck am I worried about this mess,
Right.
So anyway, we went and got there, and of course had the opportunity when we were there to share. I kind of back up a little bit. In 2017, when we went, Chris and I were a little bit discouraged because there wasn't an active, there was only representation from 3 of the 10. There's 10 little village churches that were trying to kind of keep things going. Mm-hmm. We only were able to talk to representatives from 3 of the laymen there. And so at one time there were 15 to 20 pretty active, busy, I say busy, working, functional little village churches. And to see it decline like it had, that was one of the burdens that God had given me. I hate to see them kind of falling back. But so anyway, that was what it was in 17. In 17, I had the chance to kind of encourage Eric and Royal and a man named Peter, and encourage them to step outside of that, what's comfortable, and do things that in their culture may be considered taboo, because you don't insert yourself into another village's business. You just gotcha. It's a different chief for this village, That
would be overstepping.
And so it's not a comfortable thing for them to do. And I had encouraged them to go ahead and take that risk. God, He wants the churches to thrive. So when we got there in 2019, there were 11 men, and so it was like God was saying, all right, you did what was hard in 17, and it was encouraging to them. Yeah. And I was able to tell them, say, look, when I was here in 17, there were 3 of you. Right. Now there's 11 of you jokers here, kind of a thing. And so they were excited. Of course, got to share with them what God had been doing in our life, and that He had planted that seed years ago. And we had finally gotten to the spot where God made it clear we were supposed to move to China. And oh man, it was a big hoopla. They were celebration. They were so super pumped, Yeah. Well, then, so Eric, we were staying with a man named Eric in the village there at White Sands. I said, I need to find a place to live,
Right. That's kind of a big logistical thing, I would think.
Our intent is to live here at White Sands. We feel like that's where God wants us to land. And so we had walked up to this little community area there at White Sands. You got the village Latapunga where we're going to be, and then there's another little village adjacent to it that it was originally founded around this little Catholic church that's no longer functioning there, but there's still a few homes there and a small group of people that still live there. But they've got this community building that they've all pooled what monies they have, and got a little concrete building, and they occasionally will have a medical clinic in it, and then the other side is used for an occasional market. Anyway, there was a section of land I thought would be a sweet place to, if the chief was okay with it, us coming in somewhere down the road and building a house there, because it was kind of centrally located, quick access to a decent road. In my mind, my planner mind, sure. I had already thought that'd be the ideal place.
That's a good place. Yeah.
The sun is good. I can hook up solar stuff,
The problem being that the chief has to
grant that.
Yeah.
Well, so I told Eric, I said, what about this particular spot here? And he said, that's too public. And I said, what do you mean it's too public? And his words were, it's not safe. It's too busy. And the only thing I can gather is it's along one of the main footpaths, and there are a lot of people that cut through this particular area. And they didn't like the idea of somebody walking through our area, kind of a thing. It's a community area. Right. Anyway, the chief had given it for that community building, whatever. I said, okay, that's no big deal. I said, do you have a place in mind? And he just looked at me and he said, we've got a place for you to live. I said, oh, you do? And he said, we knew 2 years ago that you were coming. And he said, the chief gave you land 2 years ago. And I said, what? He said, yeah. He said, we've been praying for years that you would come. And he said, the chief too, he said, his dad is the chief. He said, my dad gave you a land place 2 years ago. I said, wow. Okay. And so even over there, it was like God was saying, dude, what are you worried about?
It's just lining up. Right.
I mean, and so, even over there, it was like God punched me, and it was like, I don't need you to plan things out. I've got it. I don't need you to do anything except exactly what I show you to do next. And I said, okay. I said, well, let's go look at it. Let's go see where it is. Yeah. And it's right next to the little church building that's in the village there. And nice. It's right behind this an area they call a knockamal, where all the chiefs and the men meet every evening to have discussions and to kind of talk things out. It's a perfect location, and I get my island brother, his name, the little boy Pierre that I told you that I met in 200005. Of course,
he's older now.
Connected. He's married now.
Oh wow,
and
nice.
And so he has figured out Facebook. So I get messages from him. It's like 1 a.m. here when he messages me. And he's like, just waking up, fix to go clear some more of the land, and he's been sending me pictures, along the way of him clearing the land out. But I don't know. It's just one of those deals where, I finally got myself out of the way, and God has just continued to show me, like, man, I don't need you to do anything except just go.
Yeah,
I'll give you when I'm ready to show you what's next, I'll show you. And I have strangely found myself at peace with that now.
Yeah, like
I don't have to. I know our house needs to sell. That's our big thing right now. It's up for sale. We need it to sell, and realistically, when it sells, I mean, there's nothing left holding us back here. Yeah. Once it's gone, then as far as that goes, we can be gone too.
Yeah. So you talked about the support and stuff. How much support do you need? Like, is there like a dollar amount you're looking for?
After visiting with the pastor of the church that supported David for years over there, the best I've kind of talked with Tracy some, kind of things to consider. Tracy Ship in Thailand,
who's a missionary in Thailand.
Right.
He was here as a pastor,
right? And I visited with he and Shauna some about different things to consider.
Yeah,
we've kind of landed in the neighborhood of $3,000 to $3,500 a month. Is what we feel like that would consider fully funded.
Yeah.
And
how much are you at right now? Like, if you
well, I mean, right now it's not concrete that we have a sponsoring church. I visited with the elders at Crossgate, and we're kind of working through that still some. And but strangely enough, I'm at peace with whatever comes. However it comes. I had a chance to share at my home church in Benton. Sunday night, and it was, of course, well received, and they're praying through what their role is going to be. Yeah, they have a long time been a supporter of the work there on Tana. Yeah, and the fact that I'm homegrown there, that makes,
God, better connection.
That's what it is. I mean, God gave me those connections from an early age, right? For reasons that I didn't even know until now,
right?
Kind of a thing. Yeah.
So is there a way for individual people to give and support as well? Have you said
right now, if someone wanted to give, they could give to Sharon Missionary Baptist in Benton, just designate it for Ricketts in Vanuatu, and that's fine. I'm working on getting an online system set up for support. I've had several people text, "Hey, can I give online?" Yeah, and I'm working on getting that set up. I got a domain secured and getting ready to kind of set up a page to kind of keep information flowing. It's that's one of those deals that I've kind of had to dance lightly around because of some other logistics with things in Port Vila. So I haven't been able to just go full, public about it until. But it's to that point now that I can. Cool. And so I've got a domain secured. It's going to be Isaiah 42:12 missions.org. Nice. You can go on there right now. It's still, I haven't launched that totally, but it's still kind of building that. But before too long, I'll release that out, and
nice.
It'll have information and a way to give online, and
perfect. We'll definitely link that as well.
Been listening. One of my good buddies is an accountant, and I visited with him. You and I had talked the other day about it, and I had talked to him about a 501c3 for a different purpose, not this mission, and he had discouraged it for what we had talked about, and now that I've kind of explained to him what we're doing,
what you're doing now,
he felt like that might be the best route to go. Yeah. So working on that too. It may end up turning into like a
when I did
kind of a thing
for the thing in college, that 1511 project thing. It took like a year and a half. Like I submitted it. I think it took like a year and a half to get approved. But it was fine. Like after like I was so worried because I did all the paperwork by hand. Yeah. Like I'm in college. Right. I know nothing.
What am I
doing? And so I kind of asked some people that I knew that I had it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, just put that." And so I submitted it and it went through. Yeah. But it just takes forever. Yeah. But they do allow retroactive from the date you submitted to that's the donations you get from then.
They can still get a tax break,
which is definitely good to know.
Yeah. That is good to know.
Cool. Yeah. So when are you going? What's the kind of...
Still kind of fluid on our date. We have been saying late September,
right,
October.
Which is why I wanted to get this in
Get
August.
it in there, right? Yeah. So, and that's, as far as we can tell right now, that seems still reasonable. Yeah.
So main thing is just selling the house.
That really is the main thing.
Yeah.
I've gotten quotes for shipping containers to ship minimal things over there, but and it takes 60 to 75 days. That's what's crazy. Crystal and I were talking about that this morning. She said, we need to think about getting things headed across the ocean now, you know?
Yeah. 2.5 months. Oh,
yeah. Anyway, so you got those little things, but it's strangely enough, that's another one of those deals where it's just like, okay,
we'll figure it out.
Got to work that out. I mean, that's it. So,
well, I'm really excited to see where things go, and I'm sure, or at least I hope that you'll be coming back every so often, maybe in a couple of years or a year. Yeah. And I would like to do another podcast with you to catch up and to show photos and share some stories. But also like to talk about different topics, like how do you build disciples there? Like how do you actually work with people and what through kind of assimilation or funnel of like, how do you get them to where they're fully fledged disciples that are discipling others on the island without the need? That's a very interesting question that I think have reached our time today, but would definitely be something
that's part of one of our focuses is obviously to disciple these. For me, it has been always a burden to disciple these men and make them aware of their spiritual responsibility as the leader of their homes. And to kind of disciple them so that somewhere down the road, long term, someone feels that sense of drawing, that calling for God to plant a church over on an adjacent island,
right?
And step outside of that comfort zone of their village,
right,
and go to another island. So
cool.
I'd be glad to come back. Exciting to do.
I appreciate you coming today.
Awesome. Glad to do.
That's a wrap.